Forward operating clandestine reconnaissance missions to find targets, destroy supply lines, gather intelligence or launch targeting hit-and-run attacks on high-value enemy areas are all mission capabilities performed and practiced by Air Force Special Operators. U.S. Air Force Special Operators are slightly shifting tactical focus to prepare for major power warfare, raising interesting questions regarding the additional mission scope they will be picking up following 15 years of counterinsurgency in Iraq and Afghanistan. The changing threat landscape, requiring some slight training adjustments and new preparation exercises, was cited by the U.S. Special Operations Commander, Army General Richard Clark during a visit to Joint Base San Antonio, Lackland, Texas. The realism and intensity of this training is vital because when these airmen finish their training, they'll need to address challenges we may not be able to predict, Clark said, according to an Air Force report. AETC is training leaders who will be asked to address an ever-changing landscape where the fight we've engaged in since 9/11 may not resemble the threat our adversaries will present in the coming years. The physical toughness, intellectual capacity and ethical core these airmen are developing during their training will help the Joint Force address the worldwide range of challenges each geographic combatant commander faces. Interestingly, much of the skill set special operators will need for great power war does have many similarities to mission envelopes pursued in recent years in Iraq and Afghanistan. Special operators would need to conduct pararescue missions behind enemy lines, engage in high-risk forward reconnaissance operations, perform tactical air controller targeting and even conduct direct attack air assault ambushes when needed. Close-in attacks and hostage rescue operations could easily bring great value in the kind of close-quarter battle likely to unfold in any kind of large-scale mechanized force-on-force engagement. While there are of course many longer-range sensors and weapons to consider when it comes to the possibility of major rival combat, however, future warfare involving large armies by no means removes the need to close-up attack once initial battle formations are breached and attackers penetrate. Laser painting. Spotting or finding ground targets for fighter jets and bombers to attack is a mission arguably even more pressing and important for special operators should they be immersed in a major war campaign. Much of this might require the kind of intelligence mission expertise required of special operators because they may need to conduct these kinds of operations in secret. Forward operating clandestine reconnaissance missions to find targets, destroy supply lines, gather intelligence or launch targeting hit-and-run attacks on high-value enemy areas are all mission capabilities performed and practiced by Air Force Special Operators. Air Force Special Tactics Squadron warriors painted Taliban targets for air attack assets in Afghanistan, and similar yet slightly more protected or hidden operations would likely be in great demand should there be massive, large-scale warfare. Meanwhile, a second B-21 Raider bomber is under construction at Northrop Grumman's facility at the United States Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale, California, while the first one slowly takes shape ahead of its expected rollout in early 2022. The B-21 was previously expected to fly for the first time later this year, in December. However, it looks like that the plans changed, with Walden saying that a first flight in mid-2022 is now a good bet, adding that the first bomber, even if it didn't reach the final assembly stage yet, is slowly taking shape and really starting to look like a bomber. As for the second bomber, Walden said that it is being built mainly for structural testing. The second one is really more about structures and the overall structural capability. We'll go in and bend it. We'll test it to its limits, make sure that the design and the manufacturing and the production line make sense. The lessons learned during the building process of the first Raider are being applied to the second one, with the work progressing much more efficiently now that the workers are not restricted anymore to work based just off the blueprint's assumptions. Also, there has been an increase in the workforce as Boeing 737 MAX workers from Spirit Aviation of Wichita, which is supplying aerostructures for the B-21, were shifted to the B-21 program, avoiding the risk of losing their jobs after the order for the 737 MAX collapsed following two horrific crashes in 2018 and 2019. This workforce increase also helped to compensate some of the delays caused by the COVID pandemic. Walden mentioned that the program is working with the suppliers to ensure that a slower parts delivery does not delay the aircraft production. Obviously, even with all the precautions, there could always be some surprises along the way, especially when working on a complex program like the B-21. Walden said that the surprises are expected, and they are ready to solve them as they present themselves. For instance, one of these surprises was discovered in 2018, when some thrust issues related to the bomber's inlet and serpentine ducting were noticed and promptly solved, after some basic changes to the design. The team working on the B-21, however, is trying to anticipate these problems. One of the means used to do this is a business-class jet used as avionics testbed to test hardware and software before transferring them to the B-21, similar to what Lockheed Martin did with the Cooperative Avionics Testbed aircraft, better known as Catbird, while developing the F-35 Lightning II, or the flying testbed used while developing the F-22 Raptor. According to Walden, the jet is flying real B-21 software, assessing the integration of sensors and code into the future bomber test fleet, and is making good progress with satisfying results, giving the team a lot of confidence about powering up the first aircraft for its maiden flight next year. The new bomber will be ready for service around 2026 or 2027, according to Lieutenant General James C. Dawkins, Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Deterrence and Nuclear Integration. Major General Wetherington said during the VASC 2020 that the bomber is reported on track and on schedule, even if the first flight has been delayed, and it will also have a reduced unit cost than previously predicted, which however has not been specified. The Congressional Budget Office estimated in 2018 that the cost of developing and buying the first 100 aircraft should be $80 billion in 2016 dollars. The Air Force plans to get at least 100 Raiders. The development program is highly secretive, with little info being disclosed. Earlier last year, the Air Force published 3 new renderings of the B-21, 4 years after the first one, giving for the first time a glimpse of the shape of the new bomber, which will have a lot of things in common with the B-2 Spirit. You can find a more detailed analysis in this previous article here at The Aviationist. When it will finally enter service, the B-21 Raider will replace the B-1B Lancer and the B-2A Spirit, while also increasing the bomber fleet from the current 156 to the goal of 220 total bombers. The ability to meet this goal is closely related to the B-21 Raider development, as the Air Force is making sure that the aircraft will be affordable, sustainable and rapidly modifiable, upgradable and, until the aircraft is ready, the B-1B readiness, the B-52H engine replacement program and the B-2A fleet deterioration. The B-52H Stratofortress will actually continue to serve alongside the B-21 through 2050. Remaining still relevant thanks to the new standoff capability added with the introduction of hypersonic weapons, but also thanks to major upgrades that will help the bomber to meet the demands of future combat scenarios it may encounter, mainly new engines, radar, weapons, and connectivity. Even if it's 60 years old, the B-52H fleet is reported to be in very good health, with a 100% mission-ready crew status on almost a regular basis. Recently, the Air Force begun planning for constructions that will support the bedown of the newest Air Force stealth bomber, with the Air Force Civil Engineering Center and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers explaining the types, quantities and scale of projects anticipated during a virtual B-21 Industry Day on January 11 at the Rapid City Military Advisory Coalition, including a low observable restoration facility, a wash rack and general maintenance hangar, and a mission operations planning facility. The location of the event was not casual, as the nearby Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota is the preferred location for the first B-21 main operating base, with Dyess AFB Texas being the alternative. The Air Force stated that these bases were selected in order to minimize the impact to operations and communities, maximizing at the same same time the reuse of existing infrastructure and reducing the overall costs to base the B-21. The final basing decision will be made this year after the completion of the environmental impact statement, giving the green light to begin the actual B-21 beddown construction.